family and friends, and those of you all that's coming on right now. Pray that you're having a blessed day. I am trying to wait to get on with the moderator of the conference that I am teaching this on. So I ask you all if you will just be patient with me just for a moment, hoping to get the link for to get on with Stones River District Association so I can go forward with that link also so I don't have to teach the information twice. And so thank you so much for being on tonight. I am excited about um, teaching this class. So let me see. They asked me to log out and log back in. I'm going to need y'all to be patient with me just for a moment. I have done just that, but for some reason, I'm not being able to get in with the link that they gave me. So let's try this one more time. How is you all's day going? I pray that you are being truly, 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 truly blessed. Um, I'm still not able to get in. Um, I pray that the Lord has been smiling on you today as He has smiled on me. Um, and so I don't know what's going on with them, but give me a moment and I will still, we're going to get going here. Um, Sometimes we have to be patient with people um, when it comes to this technology. And so I'm just learning to do that. And so if you all will be patient with me, I am sending them information to let them know I still cannot get in on the link that they have provided. And I was asked to sign out and sign back in. So I did that, and it's still not working properly. And so I'm ask you to just give me just another moment here to see if I can get in. I think I am getting in now. So thank you all for your patience as we are getting in now. You all are amazing, 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 amazing. Uh, I pray that God has smiled on you today as He has smiled on me and been so faithful and so good. Listen, we were at Cherry Grove yesterday, and Lord have mercy, we had a time. I talked about on yesterday, I made it out all right, and it was amazing. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing this evening? Good, good. I'm glad everybody is on. Yeah, I guess we're waiting on our moderator to break us out in our classes. How you doing, Bishop Breonna Mitchell? You the most blessed deacon I done seen in a long time. those of y'all that's on Facebook and on
Good
with me.
evening, everyone. Yes, the administrator muted you. I will be placing everyone in the appropriate classrooms. Excellent. If you all would, the participants would go ahead and make your class selections. I will place you in the classroom with the appropriate teacher. The class selections we have this evening will appear shortly, and you will be able to make your selection. In the meantime, we ask that everyone mute their devices until you're placed into the appropriate classroom. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you so much to all of our teachers who have joined, and we appreciate your patience.
Okay, when we're done close around 7, we can just pray them out and leave the meeting.
It will actually return them back to the main session automatically.
Okay, all right.
Yep, I'll give you a 10-minute warning, and then they will come back to the main session automatically. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank y'all that's on Facebook with me and Church App for your patience and your kindness. We are getting ready to break out into our sessions, and we'll be able to go from there. Thank you so much for your patience. As you know, when we deal with technology, it's not always the best, but we work with what we work with. So I thank God for each and every one of you for your patience. And listen, I'm going to be doing a session tonight on grief, coping with grief and loss. And I know that the times that we're living in now, not just in these times, but just everyday life, that there's so much death and sickness and all that around us. And so I want to be able to just touch this and really give some people some strength and some encouragement and also some hope in these times that we are living in and dealing with. And so I truly, truly believe that this lesson tonight will be a blessing to you. I believe that it will help you. And, I want to encourage you to also help your family and friends and those that you know that's dealing with grief or loss. And so I think that this lesson is very imperative tonight for everyone. And so please, please invite those on Facebook, start a watch party or whatever you need to do. Uh, uh, they're going to with Stones River. They're going to shut us out at. They're going to go back to the main at 7. But those of you all that's on with me right now, I will continue with the teaching and the lesson uh, for tonight that I definitely want to get through. And so we're just waiting patiently for them to break us out in the classrooms. But this will give you a time to reach out to your family and friends and those that you know that are dealing with grief and those that are dealing with the loss of a loved one. Uh, it's so imperative, so important that we are able to understand that grief is it's a process. It's a piece of life, and we want to know how to cope with grief and loss um, in a way that we can be healthy and whole. And tonight, I just want to bring some understanding and some clarity to how to cope with grief and loss. It's hard, and I think that even teaching it now, I think it's something that should always be taught. But even in teaching it now, the reality is people are not just dying to COVID. They're not just losing their lives to COVID, but heart attacks and just everyday life and everyday struggles. Individuals are dying. And if we are not taught that, first of all, grieving is a natural process. But what most people want to know is, how do I grieve? What's the right way to grieve? And so I want to be able to share that tonight and help you and your family and friends and loved ones be able to grieve I don't want to use the word properly because everybody grieves in their own way. But well, let me say it this way: grieve in a way that's proper for you. That's what I want to be able to shed some light on. And so I'm just trying to um, choose some time for them to break us out in the classroom so I can do my presentation. But while I have you, it's just good to be able to share with you and talk with you and let you know that we're able to again. All right, I'm getting ready to join my class now. All right, all right. So thank you all so much for your patience. I'm going into my classroom and I am in. Let me unmute myself. Good evening. Good evening. I pray that everyone is doing well today. Those of you all that have joined in for my particular class, I know that there's some that's coming in now as I'm going to be talking tonight about coping with grief and loss and understanding, just giving a clear understanding and hopefully to be able to help you and your loved ones and your friends understand that grief is a natural a part of life. And I can just imagine just how many folks are on right now that are find themselves in a grieving process. Grief is real. Grief is serious. Grief is especially when you're dealing with a loss. And so I wanted to want to share tonight. Again, I thank those of you all that's on Facebook, those of you all on Church app, and also YouTube who are on right now, and then those that are joining through our connection through Stones River Association. I want to get right into it tonight because I know at 7 o'clock they're going to go back to the breakout rooms, or go back to the main session, and so let's get a clear understanding of what grief and loss is, and I wanted to be able to share it with you in a way that's whole, that's healthy, that's in a way that you get a understanding of what grief and loss is. I had this wonderful, amazing PowerPoint that I had done, but for some reason it looks like here we go. Um, so, what is grief? Let's talk about what grief is. Okay. Um, Grief is a natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. Often, the pain of loss can feel overwhelming. You may experience all kinds of difficult and unexpected emotions, from shock or anger to disbelief, guilt, and profound sadness. The pain of grief can also disrupt your physical health, making it difficult to sleep, eat, or even think straight. These are normal reactions to loss, and the more significant the loss, the more intense your grief will be. Let me say that again. Grief can interrupt your sleep, it can interrupt your physical health, the way you eat, even the way that you think. But understand, this is a normal reaction to loss. And the more significant the loss, the closer you are at times to the individual, the more intense your grief will be. And so, oftentimes, when individuals are dealing with grief, they feel like they should be over it or they should not feel that way. That's absolutely not true. Coping with the loss of someone or something you love is one of the biggest challenges, life's biggest challenges. You may associate grieving with the death of a loved one, which is often the cause of most intense type of grief. But any loss can cause grief. And I want to just 12 list just 12 things right here quickly that you can also lose and it cause you grief. Divorce or relationship breakup, loss of health. You can grieve if you lose a job, If you have a loss of your financial stability, for a woman and a man, if a woman has miscarriage, that can bring about grief. Retirement can bring about grief. Death of a pet, loss of a cherished dream, a loved one's serious illness. Let me say that again. So you can begin the grieving process even if the individual has not died, or maybe they won't die, but they have a serious illness. You can find yourself in grief, loss of a friendship, loss of safety after a trauma, or even selling your family home. And so all of these different things cause grief. So let's talk about for a moment the grieving process. Grieving is a highly individual experience. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. I want to put some weight on that. There is not a right or wrong way to grieve. How you grieve depends on many factors, including your personality and your coping style, your life experience, your faith, and how significant the loss was to you. Let me say this again. You grieve according to your own personality. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. So there's things about you that determine how you grieve. Inevitably, the grieving process takes time. Healing happens gradually. It can't be forced or hurried, and there is no normal timetable for grieving. Some people start to feel better in weeks or months. For others, the grieving process is measured in years. Whatever your grief experience, it's important to be patient with yourself and allow the process to naturally unfold. Let me say that again because maybe you're not in a grieving process, but you know somebody that is. Or maybe you went through your grieving process and they are still in theirs. Understand this. You have to give them time. You have to be patient and you have to let the grieving process unfold naturally. Let me say that again. You have to allow the grieving process to unfold naturally. In other words, just because you may be over it, or maybe you're not over it, and somebody in your circle has come to a place in their grieving process where they are better. Don't feel guilty if you're not where they are. Don't feel ashamed if you're not where they are. Your grieving process is unique to you, and you have to grieve in a way that's conducive to you, and it is not measured in years. Some people get over in a few days, a few months, or maybe a year. Some people 3 4 5 years later may still be grieving the loss of a loved one, but you can't hurry the grief process. It is a natural process, and everybody has to go through their process based upon where they are. So I want to deal with some myths. There are some myths and some facts about grief and grieving. The first myth is this here: the pain will go away faster if you ignore it. That is a myth. The pain will not go away faster if you ignore it. But here's a fact: trying to ignore your pain or keep it from surfacing will only make it worse in the long run. Did you hear that? Trying to ignore your pain or keep it from coming to the surface will only make it worse in the long run. For real healing, it is necessary to face your grief and actively deal with it. You have to deal with your grief. You have to face it and deal with it. Kicking the can down the road does not make the can go away. Did you hear what I said? Kicking the rock down the road, it just may get in the pile with some more rocks, but it does not make it go away. Second myth: it is important to be strong in the face of loss. That's a myth. Here's a fact: feeling sad, frightened, or lonely is a normal reaction to loss. Crying doesn't mean that you are weak. You don't need to protect your family or friends by putting on a brave front. Showing your true feelings can help them also. Don't miss that. So when you crying does not mean that you're a weak individual. And so many times I've seen individuals in the grieving process when feel like they have to be strong for everybody else, and they are destroying themselves on the inside because they need that release. Okay. Oftentimes, when you have that release and you allow yourself to feel what you feel, you begin to help those that are grieving because you can be the one to show them that grieving is okay. It's okay to feel what you feel. It's okay to feel how you feel. But understand, crying does not mean you're weak, and you do not need to protect your family or friends by putting on a brave or strong front like you don't have emotions also. Now, here it is. Some people may not grieve that way. You still grieve the way you grieve, but the point is don't try to be someone, some superhero, because you don't have to be that in your grieving process. Here's another myth: if you don't cry, it means you aren't really sorry about the loss. That is a myth. Just because you don't cry does not mean that you're not sorry about the loss of a loved one or a pet or whatever it may be. That doesn't mean that you don't have feelings and you don't have emotions. Crying just may not be your way to show you. So here's a fact: crying is a normal response to sadness, but it's not the only one. Those who don't cry may feel the pain just as deeply as others. They may simply have another way or other ways of showing their grief. Man, that's so crucial. That is so important. So, crying is a normal response to sadness, but it's not the only one. So, some people may grieve by exercising. Some people at times may grieve by just wanting to be alone with themselves. Some people grieve by listening to music. But whatever your grieving process is, remember your grieving process is unique to you, and nobody can tell you how to grieve. Here's another myth: grieving should last for about a year. Mm. Grieving should last for about a year. Here's the fact: first of all, grieving should last about a year. That is a myth. The fact is, there is no specific time frame for grieving. How long it takes differs from one person to another person. So when you're grieving or when somebody is grieving, there is no timetable. There is no calendar that you can attach to it. There is no clock or watch that you can put to how long it takes for someone to grieve. Grieving is different for everybody. And you have to allow the grieving process to naturally take place according to how you feel in your grieving process. Wow, that's so powerful because sometimes people try to rush the process and tell people you should be over it by now or you should have been through it by now. That's absolutely not true. That is a myth. Grieving should not take a month or you don't have to be over it in a month or 6 months or a year or 3 years. It's your time frame on however it is that you grieve. Here's another myth: moving on with your life means forgetting about your loss. That's a myth. Just because you move on does not mean you forgot about your loss. And how many times have people tried to make individuals feel guilty? Listen, I've truly witnessed this. That somebody is moving on with their life and their family members or friends are like, how dare you? You act like nothing happened. You act like mom or dad or whoever didn't die. But here's the fact: moving on means you've accepted your loss. But that's not the same as forgetting. You can move on with your life and keep the memory of someone or something you lost as an important part of you. In fact, as we move through life, these memories can become more and more integral to defining the people we are. Wow. Did you hear that? And so you can move on with your life and keep the memory of someone you love, someone that you lost. You can move on with your life and do things that's important for you to move forward. As a matter of fact, that's a very healthy way and response. If that's your personality, if that's how you grieve, if that's how you have accepted the loss, you don't have to stay in a secluded, sheltered place in your grieving process. But a part of healing is moving on. And so if you're able to do that, if you know others are able to do that, don't judge them and don't allow anybody to judge you by saying, I can't believe that you're moving on now. No, you respond by, it's time for me to move on. I've accepted the fact that our loved one has passed on and I must move on. Wow, that's powerful. So how do I deal with the grieving process? While grieving a loss is an inevitable part of life, part of life, there are ways to help cope with the pain, to come with the terms with your grief, and eventually find a way to pick up the pieces and move on with your life. So I want to share with you a few ways that you can move on or how you can deal with the grieving process. First of all, acknowledge your pain. When you're in the grieving process, acknowledge your pain. Acknowledge that you're hurting. Acknowledge that it's overwhelming. Acknowledge that you're in a very uncomfortable place. Acknowledge your pain. The second way to deal with the grieving process is accept that grief can trigger many different and unexpected emotions. And so if you and your loved one listened to certain music together or went to a certain place together or had a favorite movie, that watching that or seeing that or hearing that, that may be a trigger for you and bring up different emotions for you. But understand that is a part of the grieving process. Understanding that your grieving process will be unique to you and you only. Let me say that again. You need to understand that for you, your grieving process will be unique to you. Just like somebody else in your family or friend, their grieving process is unique to them. Wow. One of the things that can help you deal with the grieving process is to seek out face-to-face support from people who care about you. Find those family members or friends or pastor or church or support group that you know that these people care about you. And sometimes talking on the phone helps, but sometimes you just need to have a face-to-face and be able to express how and what you feel. And so seek out those connections, seek out those groups or those individuals that can help you in the grieving process. Support yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself physically. You can deal with your grieving process by supporting yourself emotionally. In other words, expressing what your needs are. You acknowledge your pain. Accept the fact that there will be triggers that come up from time to time. So support yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself physically. You may have to just do some walking. Put your headphones on and put you some good music on that you like, that cheers you up, whether it's gospel or R&B and country or rap, whatever it may be. Go to the gym and do you a workout, something that's conducive to your body and your physical activity. But whatever you do, and you have to support yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself physically. Here's the next one, and this is crucial. Recognize the difference between grief and depression. Wow. And I'm going to be delving more into that in our next section. But understand that there's a difference between grief and depression. Now, if you don't grieve properly, it can lead you to depression. If you don't understand how to cope with grief and deal with the loss, a loss, it can cause you to have depression. But grief and depression are two totally different things. And you need to understand that you need to recognize the difference between the two. So here it is. There are 5 stages of grief. The first stage of grief is denial. This can't be happening to me. That is the first stage of grief. To say this can't be happening to me. And so if you have a loved one or a child or even a pet or whatever it may be, and they are you've lost them. When I say lost, I don't mean lost as far as salvation. I mean as lost as far as you don't have them in your life anymore. And you've lost them, and you will say to yourself in the denial stage, this cannot be happening to me. This can't be. Not me. This can't. They can't leave me. Okay. Even individuals. Individuals that's have been given a certain amount of time to live. This is one of the stages that they go through. The denial stage, when they won't believe that is happening to them, and they just can't believe that. Anger. Why is this happening? And who is to blame? And how many times has anger caused us to blame God? To blame maybe a family or friend. You should have taken better care of them. Or if you would have been here, they would not have died or gotten as sick. Or for yourself, if I would have done this, And so you're angry. You can be angry with yourself. You can be angry with God, and you can be angry with others. But anger is a stage of grief. And sometimes when individuals are in that stage, they take that anger out on other people that love them. Oftentimes we understand that when we're going through something, sometimes the people we hurt the most are the ones we're closest to, right? And so anger really, really shows up. And you're so angry that you'll say, why is this happening? And who is it to blame? Or begin to play the blame game. This next one is really crucial. Bargaining is the third stage of grief. Bargaining is when you talk to your higher power, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, or whoever your higher power may be, and you start bargaining. Make this not happen. And in return, I'll do A, B, C, or D. Stop them. Don't let them die. And I'll start doing this. And so bargaining stage is a stage of grief. And oftentimes people will bargain. And sometimes the bargaining that we do is very unrealistic. But we want what we want so bad that we literally put ourselves in a place of bargaining and really wanting to stop whatever the pain, the process of the pain, whatever we're grieving, we want it to stop. And so now you get into a bargaining phase. The next phase is depression. Now remember, I told you in the previous slide that grief, you have to identify the difference between grief and depression. Depression says, I'm too sad to do anything. Wow. And when people are grieving, if they don't know how to grieve, if they don't understand the grieving process, that's when grief turns into depression. And people get to a place where they say, I'm too sad to do anything. I'm too torn up. I have no motivation to do anything. I was doing a counseling session here a few days ago, and a gentleman that I was counseling with, he asked me this question. He said, how do I get motivated to do something I don't want to do? And I said, first of all, don't make excuses not to do it. But whatever you have to do, think about something that if you've lost a loved one, ask yourself, would they want me to not do anything? Would they want me to put my life on pause? Would they want me to stop living? Would they want me to stop doing the things that I know they would want me to do because they know me? And so that becomes a motivator. that becomes an encourager. That becomes something in other words, what you have to do in your grieving process is find something that will motivate you. Find something that will encourage you to press on anyway. And when you do that, that helps. Before I go to the last one, I want to ask you, are there any questions so far? Any questions or comments so far? If so, unmute yourself. That's fine. And ask your question or make your comment before I make the fifth stage of grief.
No questions.
No questions? How about you, Miss D? I guess that means no. Angel, how about you? Any questions or comments when we talk about the stages of grief?
No question.
Okay. Does this help you all as we talk about this? The coping with grief and loss? Is this helpful?
Yes, I would say this is very helpful, especially during this time of COVID.
Yeah.
Especially with everything going on, because it's not so much just the loss of life, but there are people grieving over so many things, even those in quarantine for short periods of time, that there's a reason to grieve in that because they're feeling isolated and alone. So yes, I think this is a timely lesson.
Thank you. And that's the reason why in my opening I gave those 12 different other things that people grieve, because when we think about grief or loss, if we don't understand those other things that people can grieve or lose, we start looking at them funny, or they look at us funny. You know, when my son lost his when we came home and his dog was dead. Oh man, I mean, he took it better than I did. You know, he was like, "Dad, it's just a dog." I'm like, "Yeah, but it was my dog." You know, and so.
We experienced that when I had a dog for 14 years and she passed away.
Hmm.
So yes, there is a connection there, but you're right. A lot of people only think grieving happens as after death. They
Hmm.
don't think that it's a loss, and that loss does not have to just be as a result of death, but as you pointed out in your earlier slides, it could just be circumstances of life.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Major changes
Hmm.
require that adjustment that a lot of people have a difficult time with.
Thank you so much for sharing that. The fifth stage of grief is the one that we all want to get to, and that is the acceptance stage of grief. The acceptance stage of grief says, I'm at peace with what happened. Wow. That's where we want to get, and that's where we want to help others get to. We want to help them get to that place where that's where we want to be also, is to be able to, as I go through the stages of grief, to accept or be at peace with what happened. And so if you are experiencing any of these emotions following a loss, it may help to know that your reaction is natural and that you will heal in time. However, not everyone who grieves goes through all of these stages, and that's okay. And let me just put a little weight on that. And so some people may go through one stage and may not touch the other four stages. Some people may get to the fifth stage and accept it. And when you're in the grieving process, that doesn't mean, when we give the 5 stages of grief, it doesn't mean that you will grieve in order like that. It doesn't mean that your grieving will take place in an order like that, 1 through 5. You may hit 1 and jump right to 3. In other words, you may be in denial and then go straight to bargaining. Or you may be depressed and go back up to bargaining or anger. And so it does not happen in a process, in a format like that. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to go through each stage in order to heal. In fact, some people resolve their grief without going through any of these stages. Wow. That's powerful. That's good to know. That there are some people that don't go through any of those stages of grief. Their grief may be totally different, or can be, or will be totally different, and they not touch not one of these stages. And if you do go through these stages of grief, you probably won't experience them in a neat sequential order. So don't worry about what you should be feeling or which stage you're supposed to be in. That statement right there is one you need to hold on to, because we're not looking for a number in our grief process. We're looking to see where we are in the grieving process so we can start the healing process. Because it is inevitable that at some point, and again, we're not putting a time on your grieving process, but at some point you need to get there. You want to get there, that you deal better with the grieving process. And so we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. And those on Facebook and Church App, I'm sorry, I don't have a format now where I can open up for questions. Or maybe I do. You can type your question in the box. But those that are on, Miss Felicia, you all have any comments you want to add to the lesson we just shared?
It's a good lesson. It's an appreciated lesson, and as you said, it is not necessary because people, as you've been seeing throughout this, a lot of times they think that there's a cookie cutter format. No one will grieve the same. There will be some people who experience a traumatic loss and they will never shed a tear. But the thing is to understand that where you are, regardless of what stage it is, that's exactly where you need to be
Yeah,
in order to grieve and to heal. Because once you allow yourself to not worry about how anyone else goes through it, but once you allow yourself to just experience it as you need to, that puts you one step closer to just being healed.
that's good. Those of you on Facebook, you can type in a question if you have a question, or you can type in your question. We have a couple of more minutes. Angel, what did you get out of this?
Mm, well, what I got out of it is just that it's it's okay to cry and it's okay to show how you feel because oftentimes I have to remember that. I think I've learned that a lot now that I'm a bit older. I mean, I'm only 20, but I've
You're
learned.
an old woman. You are an old woman.
It's just like I learned that now that I can just be more open with my mom and just have, just cry to her and pour out to her. So just to know it's okay to not be okay.
That's good. That's a great takeaway. It's okay to not be okay. I've said that for years, and I see that coming up on different things now, and I see professional athletes talking about that. But you're exactly right, uh, Angel. It is okay not to be okay. Listen, I won't be on tomorrow. Tomorrow's my birthday, and I'm going to celebrate my birthday. But I will be back on Wednesday, and Miss Felicia will send out the information, the notice or whatnot, for me to pick back up on Wednesday. But I thank you all for being on. All those that's on Facebook and YouTube that came on tonight. I want you to share this. Because the grieving process is a real process. Grief is for real, and we need to understand that it's okay. And so we're ready to go back into the breakout room. We'll go back into the full service. But thank you all for being on and participating tonight. God bless you, and I love you to life.
What is the live stream on here? What's it on? Oh,
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. We will be transitioning to the preached word.
We're thankful for your return back into the worship experience of this, the first night of our 151st Stones River Church Association annual session and Congress. Our prayers that you had a wonderful time in class. Now, what I need you to do is actually reach out and tell some people so that they can engage and get this phenomenal material that's being given to us so that we can grow in our Christian journeys and
I
become
do.
more Christ-like in our actions. So we look forward
No, I
to
was
returning to
doing the
class
Stones River.
tomorrow morning, excuse me, tomorrow at noon, where we'll go back into our session of